Well, hello and welcome to the latest edition of the About Small Business podcast. This is a second series, and today I'm actually going to be speaking to Donna Liddle from the Genuine Connection. If you are enjoying the content that we're making from About Small Business podcast, please do subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so that anytime a new podcast drops, then you're going to get a notification about that and it'll let you know to tune in. Donna,
Hi.
thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Genuine Connection.
Yeah.
I've met you a couple of times before. You do seem like a genuine person. Can you tell me a little bit about the services that you're offering?
So it is sort of coaching, confidant for small business owners, very much supporting the person behind the business. The Genuine Connection name, I guess, came about because that, for me, is what it's all about. The clients that I work with, I have to have a genuine connection to them. It's not kind of just about making money and, growing the business. I genuinely want to see people grow their business and to get the support that they need. So I'm very kind of selective about the clients and the kind of work that I do with my clients as well.
Does that not impact on business if you've been selective?
It does, but it means it kind of impacts in a positive way as well, because there is that idea that I'm not just taking on any client willy-nilly. It is very much about clients that I know that I have the capabilities to work with, that we have that genuine connection. My background was sort of 20 years in mental health, where I coordinated counselling services, assessing clients, and I felt it was very important to put clients with counsellors that I knew they would get the most out of that relationship. And for me, that's what I bring into my business as well. So I want them to be able to get that most out of that relationship that we have, and equally that I get the most out of it as well. I think we've all had clients we've worked with who maybe haven't matched with so well, and it can impact on our business negatively.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, kind of removing that in the very early stages. If I can't work with a client, I'll tell them up front that, that the relationship isn't going to be the most productive, or if I don't have the skills and knowledge to get the best for them, then I would refer them on to other coaches, therapists, whatever it is that they need.
I was going to say, I mean, coach, it's one of these words that I see cropping up. I'm not sure I've got a full understanding of it, and I'm sure I can't be the only one. It's one of these things. I'm sure it's been around for a long time, but probably starting to become a little bit more prominent.
Yeah.
What sort of issues, challenges, problems even would I be having that I would want to reach out to a coach?
So it can vary because there's loads of different coaches. Obviously you've got them from kind of the fitness side of things and sports coaches into business coaches.
Which I think is much, the sports coaching, that's much easier to understand, isn't it? When you're talking about anything, I suppose, because you brought up mental health.
Yeah.
Anything like that is much, I think as a society, we're still just a teeny bit scared of it, aren't we, really?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that there's so many differences in the type of coaches now, and I think coaches become very much a word that's just used and doesn't necessarily have any kind of understanding of for the most part. Myself, in the way that I would use the term coach, is I guess much more in the sense of supporting a client to access their own tools and resources. So I'm not there to kind of tell you how to do something, which I guess maybe in a sports coaching way that would be a little bit more where they would be guiding you and things like that. Business coaching might be guiding you through specific processes, specific programs. For me, the way that I coach clients is much more about drawing information out of that client. So I want to understand and learn more about their processes, the way that they do things really well. For me, there is no one size fits all. Every client I work with is very individual in the way that I coach them, depending on their needs.
Yeah. I suppose that there are the parallels with the sports coaching. I mean, it may be that I want to lose weight. That requires a certain type, I need to know a lot about the sort of the nutrition side of things and sort of calorie balancing. I still need to know about that if I want to sort of bulk up and become really muscular.
Yeah.
I suppose from what I'm understanding from what you're saying, are you then looking at, say, for example, my business, I'm telling you what I need, what I'm struggling with, and you're then assessing from that what you can help with and what you can,
Yeah. Yeah.
through knowing my skills and getting to know me, you say, right, well, you're really good at this. This is what you need to capitalize on.
Yeah, often a lot of time is what somebody comes with is not often what is really going on. So doing a little bit of kind of more awareness where what's kind of underneath. Sometimes we can often have like a surface level problem, but when we get a little bit more awareness and understanding of that, it could be to do with something else. So that's where the kind of therapy background comes in a little bit more to understand what's really going on. Like I say, we can present with a specific issue, which we think, I've been there myself, where you kind of go, oh, my business isn't growing because my marketing needs help or this needs help. So oftentimes it's understanding a little bit more about the kind of the specific issue that the client's presenting with, learning and understanding more about what they're actually experiencing, how that's showing up, where that's showing up for them. And oftentimes clients that I work with have already undergone some form of kind of business coaching program that they've been in, maybe a group program, and they've come to me with that real sense of, I'm doing all of the things, but why is it not working? You know, we're taught, like, there's a lot of stuff out there telling you how to grow your business, just follow these simple steps. And it's not always that easy. You know, I mean, I've spoken to coaches myself where they go, well, all you need to do is this, this and this. And you're kind of like, that's all well and good, but there's something between me kind of taking in that information and me acting on that information.
It's interesting,
and that's that bit in the middle.
because you see a lot of formulas.
Yeah.
And I was chatting to someone yesterday, funnily enough, he's a writer, and he's actually written a book about a formula that he's used to make a success of a couple of business. And he says he's just put that in writing to start his writing journey, which is fantastic. But you see advertised over Facebook, and this formula for success, and it feels as though it never is quite that simple.
Yeah, because we're not all the same.
Absolutely.
We all have other things that impact, and I think that's why I say more coach and confidant, because life and business don't happen independently of each other.
No.
So as much as you want to kind of just step in and follow the processes and do all of the things, life gets in the way of that. Family gets in the way of that.
Yeah.
What we want to achieve out of our business is often, like when they talk about the why, is often connected to family. It's often connected to kind of financial freedom, like time freedom as well, to be able to do things. And you know yourself, growing a business, you don't have a lot of family time, or and the financial freedom doesn't come for a long time. But equally, the clients that I work with may also have kind of other issues that are going on. They may have mental health or physical health issues themselves. They may have family members that they care for who have physical and mental health issues. So all of that impacts. It's really difficult, I think, to show up in your business sometimes when things aren't going well in the background. We don't live that Instagram life, but we try to portray it. And I think there's a lot of that kind of stuff that goes on in the coaching that I do with clients. We compare ourselves so much to everybody else. We have this perception of what is happening for everybody else around us, especially if things aren't going really well for us.
Absolutely.
And it gets even harder to show up. And a lot of the clients, and again, it comes back to the idea of the genuine connection. A lot of the clients that I work with don't want to put out the illusion of how things are going, so then they won't put anything out at all, because it's like, but I'm not doing all of these things. And in order to grow your business, there's that kind of social media side of it. There is putting yourself out there, and as well, often what I find is the kind of the processes and the simple steps that are out there to grow your business don't always fit with people as well. So I found that myself. I'm not a person who like, oh, you just tell us what to do and I'll follow the steps. I'm very much I like to find my own way. So I like to kind of take what I've learned, but help clients to adapt and to change that into the way that they work specifically. So when we were talking about kind of how you do things really well, is you can implement parts of a process into the way that you do something, so you find it easier to follow those steps without specifically just following it straight away.
So you mentioned your background. You've spent obviously quite a considerable amount of time working in mental health. mental health 20 years ago certainly wasn't as prolific as it appears to be now.
Yeah,
I'm sure the issues were there,
yeah,
but certainly, I mean, like I say, I don't think we're there yet, but we certainly don't seem to be, we seem to be talking about it more than we
yeah,
did, presumably back when you
yeah,
started.
yeah, absolutely.
What prompted you? I mean, was that something that you knew you wanted to go into from school? So something you fell into, or?
No, I would say I've probably had mental health problems myself since I was in my teens. So I was, my plan was always I wanted to be a photographer. That
All
was
right.
what I wanted to do.
Do
Got
you still do
taught.
much, or?
No, no. Just like for fun.
Yeah.
But when I went to college, got talked into doing media because you did more than just photography. You did
Yeah.
like radio programs. You did, well, back then it was more radio. Now it'll probably be podcasts, but it was like radio
Yeah.
programs, And I was always around people in bands, so I like kind of music management side of it. And when I went to college, went from media to music management. And I wanted to do kind of then event and tour, stage management and things like that. But I had my own mental health problems when I was kind
Right.
of going through college, specifically. And my mother at the time volunteered for the charity that I then ended up going and working for, and they had a young people's group. And because I was struggling at the time, she was like, "Oh, why don't you come along?" And they looked for volunteers, so
Yeah.
just kind of helped out.
What was the charity?
So Derwentide Mind I worked for.
Oh, okay.
And I can remember going for a job interview somewhere else. I've been doing like a little bit of casual work for them, just like bits of admin and things
Yeah.
like that. And I went for a job interview to work somewhere in Newcastle. It was like an awful thing. I just didn't want to do. And when I came back, they said, "Oh, we need somebody. Do you want to work here?" So it was kind of just that I fell into it.
Isn't that often the way things
Yeah,
work out, though? I mean, it's.
yeah,
I mean, I've chatted to the amount of people that I've interviewed. We've just sort of fallen into self-employment. We
yeah,
might have been doing something that we're passionate about, but then something's happened, redundancy, whatever. It's just you sort of fall. Dare I say, fate?
yeah,
And it's an interesting one, I think.
yeah, definitely.
So so you fell into that,
Yeah.
and you were working for the and what were you doing for the charity?
So initially, like I say, it was a lot of admin stuff. I used to run the young people's group because that was why they'd kind of asked me. The girl who had been running it was going on, I think she was going on to maternity leave. There was another member of staff leaving at the same time. So it was kind of like, "Oh, will you cover the young people's group?" We used to have a Saturday drop in, so I used to do that. And it kind of just grew from there. We had counselling students who were, at the time it was a diploma in counselling, and in the second year of diploma, the same as second year of foundation degree now, you had to have a supervised placement and you had to get a set number of hours of supervised
Yeah.
counselling. So I then started to coordinate the service, and we've had kind of anywhere from sort of 8 to about probably 12 to 15 counsellors at any one time. And we had two officers, one in standing, one in concert, so they would work over the two officers. So it was kind of just keeping all of that service running, becoming the person who did all of the assessments of clients, along with some of the other members of staff, but assessing clients as they came into the service to see what it was that they needed. And for some clients, sometimes it was just that assessment.
Yeah.
That's all they needed, is somebody to listen.
Yeah.
And for others, obviously, into kind of the counselling services and some of our other services.
Was there a specific type of person that you think would use that service, or?
It was everybody, and I think a lot of, because we were independent, it was, there was still a lot of stigma, definitely in the early stages. Counselling, used to have counsellors in doctors' surgeries when, the counselling was readily available. But I think for us, we got a lot of people who, worked in police, fire, ambulance services, GPs even, social workers, things like that as well, because we were independent, because there was nothing that was going back to a GP or going back to a workplace to tell them about.
That's really interesting, because there is that one thing that's always made me conscious, and I've never heard it discussed before, but if you go for life insurance quotes, you now, if you've been to a doctor, you've got to declare that, and your insurance goes up. And it's like, well, we're trying to, if I mean, I get the whole thing, it's about risk management and from the business perspective, but there just seems something fundamentally wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
With that, and as I say, I that's why I asked that question: was there a certain type of person? And I say that because certainly back then, I mean, I had a few ups and downs myself, like just work, just not enjoying work. Love the people I work with, but the job itself really used to get me down. I was chatting to someone the other day who saying they were in tears at the prospect of going for work. And this was probably, you know, going back maybe say sort of 20, 25 years. And I just wouldn't have dreamt of admitting that.
Yeah. I think a lot of people were like that. And I think to some degree, it probably still exists in certain
I think you're absolutely right. I think you're absolutely right, because I mean, there's still the stigma attached to it, and it's like no one wants to be the one that's talked about.
Exactly.
And other people, I think there's that projection that so many people do, like, all right, well, they've admitted, they must be. There's a perception of that weakness, isn't there? Whereas, to me, to admit that, you've got to be strong enough. To admit that yes, you need help, and strong enough to say, I need, you know, I need this service.
And I think it is really difficult. I think for a lot of the time we don't actually realise we're already in it when we're in it as well.
Good point.
It takes a long time. People around us will see it probably long before we'll admit to it happening. I know that for myself, that you know, it does take a lot to kind of go, actually, there might be something wrong. And I think oftentimes we feel like we can't talk to people. We have to solve our own problems, and I think that's kind of comes with the business owners as well, is we get very insular in our problems and very much in our own heads, and it's difficult to kind of put your hand up and say, like, I'm struggling right now, and ask for help. And then oftentimes now, when things have changed so much in terms of mental health, I left Ironside Mine in 2019, but I myself, I'm currently receiving services from Talk and Changes, which has taken, I think I applied in November. I only started therapy in August. So it was a long wait. And if you think about somebody, you know, I was lucky, I had a lot of resources myself. I've got a good support network. But if you're a person who doesn't have that and you're really struggling and you have to wait a long time for therapy, there aren't the doctors, counsellors now. None of that exists.
I think the services have been cut to the bone. I mean, I know certainly, let's say, working in education, with the CAMS, and a lot of their counsellors are just overwhelmed, and then they're going off sick, and that just then compounds the problems. And it's, I'm not going to pull my punch. You've got morons, absolute morons, all this snowflake generation, and it really winds me up. It's like, you know, if you've not lived in, it's just basically, I think that again, that projection, denial of trauma, or if I admit this, then I'm weak, so I'm going to fight through it, and it's. And there's nothing wrong with me, and it's frustrating when you see it, and ultimately it's not helpful.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, you know, if you get people at breaking point, prisons are full of people with mental health issues, and you only need one or two people to go down that route, and there's so much destruction that takes so much effort and time and resources to rebuild. Whereas if we could be a bit more forward thinking, and get these services back, we might be able to catch and maybe save in the long run. I don't know.
It's such a difficult one, and I think, like I say, oftentimes, you know, people do reach out. They're not necessarily getting the support that they need, and I think now the thing that I've really struggled with things like Talk and Changes is that there's back to this one size fits all. It's like, it's a CBT based, is majority of the therapy. There are higher intensity therapies, but if you don't know what you need, I'm kind of lucky in that I've had lots of experience. I have had therapy through, you know, over the years, so I know what works for us and I know what doesn't, and I was able to advocate for myself and say this is the kind of therapy that I want, hence why I had to wait so long for it,
Yeah.
because I didn't want to go through the process of just having, support for the sake of having it. It was kind of like, I know what I need to work on. I
Yeah.
know this is the thing that works for us. I've had it before. But a lot of people don't know that, and a lot of people kind of fall through the cracks and don't get the support that they need.
Absolutely.
And I think, it is really difficult to firstly kind of admit that you need help, then to find the right kind of help. And you hear lots of
Yeah.
people who, will say, oh yeah, I've had that, it didn't work for us, or yeah, I went for the
It's that admission. It's that. I mean, I know certainly with a lot of men at the minute. Obviously, we've got massive issues in this. I think probably worldwide with male suicides, and it is interesting because, funny as I think about it, going back about sort of 20, 25 years ago, I do recall, because we were travelling around Australia at the time, and I do recall that in a lot of the sort of country areas, they'd got huge problems with male suicides because not able to like sort of live up to, like you'd mentioned earlier about the Instagram lifestyle.
Yeah.
Obviously, Instagram wasn't an issue then,
Yeah.
but just the I think the common perceptions, misconceptions about what men should be,
Yeah.
and I think just the point that you made then, admitting that you need the help, I think is a big issue that affects men. But then I think what's not as often talked about, because people talk about that a lot, it's like, we need to be brave, we need to get it out there.
Yeah.
But I think what you've just said is absolutely crucial, really. It's like, so, well, once you have admitted it, you're then vulnerable. And finding the right help is an absolute minefield.
Yeah.
And and if that help's ineffective, that's you've left yourself vulnerable. Someone's effects, Matt and Beth, it's really hard, isn't it?
It is. It's really difficult, and just on what you were saying there, the fact that you might reach out for help, but when will you get that help? Will it be the right help? And at Derwentide Mind, we used to have a rapid response suicide prevention service. That was with we collaborated with some of the other local Mind organisations and with the NHS Trust, and it was the NHS Trust that approached the Mind organisations to develop a service. And so we would get referrals from crisis team who had presented to crisis team within, I think, 24 hours. We would kind of get the referral over, they would be triaged and seen within 5 days. So at least you had that. I'm not certain that even still exists as a service now.
No.
And certainly not aware of services that do respond as quickly. I mean, crisis team are there. The police will do welfare checks and things like that, but
I say a lot seems to be falling onto the police, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And it is just difficult because people need something beyond that initial kind of moment of crisis.
Yeah.
You need that support that's available, to be able to kind of keep working through the problem. It's not just like, oh, I'll have one conversation with you and I'm fine now. And it is getting that support that continues to address what the issues are. And for some people, those issues, will lead back to kind of past traumas, early childhood. It could be something that's happening right now and they're really struggling to deal with it.
Yeah.
But that support just isn't available in the same way that it once was. And it wasn't available sort of countrywide or anything like that. Certainly there's other kinds of projects that were around in the country doing similar things. But yeah, it's just, I think for me that's always been like, I guess I don't deal with the crisis part of it as much now as I did when I worked in mental health, but I still find that with business owners, anxiety, depression, it's a huge draw on your mental health, I think.
Yes,
to
absolutely.
kind of keep yourself going through growing your business.
Well, I mean, funnily enough, when I started this podcast, it was actually an idea that I had with the guy who I interviewed in the very first episode, Simon Bourne. He was from the Hand-Dyed Shoe Company, doing really well. He'd been on Dragon's Den and everything. He's talked quite widely about his mental health issues. He's now running an estate agency. He's sort of moved on and hopefully sort of moving from success to success. But he's been a huge advocate for the mental health, and that was something that we were going to look at. You know, we did want to be a big focus with this. So we do know that it is an issue. But I mean, for you and your journey, at what point did you decide you were going to leave the mental health service? Because I mean, you seem to me you come across very much as someone that wants to help.
Yeah.
And that certainly does come across as genuine.
Yeah.
So I'm just interested in the transition from mental health and all that experience to then start working for yourself, because I think from coaching you're not purely focused on the mental health, are you?
No. So I started my business while I was still working for Mind. I started 14 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, 2009. And I did it alongside working at Mind.
Right.
So I used to do evenings and weekends when I wasn't at work. And that was around everything from sort of confidence. I'd obviously still worked with the mental health side of it, used to do weight loss. So I also do NLP and hypnotherapy alongside coaching. So working with lots of things. I also worked with a professor at the University Hospital Durham for what was called the constipation clinic, but it was people who had severe enduring bowel conditions, and a lot of that support was about quality of life. So he had a very good team. There were psychotherapists on the team, there were nurses, yoga, biofeedback, he had surgeons, and so he wanted to offer a holistic approach to his patients, because with a lot of the kind of bowel conditions, they can be functional illnesses, things like IBS. So it's trying to understand the whole person and the whole life, not just, you're presenting with this, a bit like what I was saying before, you present with an issue, but actually there's a whole host of other things going on as well. So as a kind of multidisciplinary team, we were able to offer different services, and mine was around that kind of NLP hypnotherapy side to help with the, like I say, the quality of life. The same in mental health as it is in physical health, that people kind of become their condition. So I am depressed, I am constipated, I am,
Yes, defines them.
And it defines how they live their life. You've got the same issues. Anxiety stops you going out. Anxiety also can massively affect your bowels and things like that. And so that again affects how you go out. And a lot of people would really, their life would be dictated to by their physical or mental health conditions. So the idea was that I would go in to help separate that out a little bit, that your condition is not who you are as a person. Helping them, I guess, understand the kind of, back to that process and idea from NLP, in the sense of we run the same process. So if you had problems with urgency, oftentimes you would be thinking, I've got to go to that podcast in the morning. So, right, I need to get up at like 6 o'clock in the morning. I need to take some tablets. I need to do this. Right, I can't go out, and then I have to go to the toilet before. So you end up in this kind of really anxious state, which then obviously impacts, what's happening in your body as well. Your body's responding to that, and will become like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I hope you're not describing your own morning there. Don't want to put additional pressure onto you.
Lovely, relaxing morning, actually.
It's more than I've had, actually. I've got a daughter who had forgot to set her alarm or whatever. The alarm didn't go off, so I've got to. And I think I messaged you about that. And then another daughter, who didn't actually say anything to her credit, but it's like sort of getting to school with her in this weather. So I can relate.
And it's thinking about the fact that a lot of, like I say, we get stuck in that kind of way of this is life and this is what it's about.
Yes.
And I've experienced those things. The professor that I worked for was my consultant when I used to been going to see him since I was 16. And he'd kind of seen the journey that I'd been on, and when I was doing the training, kind of went, do you want to come and work with my patients? And again, purely by chance, that I happened to be reading a book on NLP when I went to see him one day, because you sit in the waiting room for hours waiting to see doctors, and he was like, what's that? I said, that's what I've been studying. And so it just came about like that, but found that it really was beneficial. We used to score the kind of I can't remember what, I think it was like a patient health questionnaire that I used to fill in to see that it would kind of, the quality of life would change, because a lot of it was kind of teaching people how to get out of that cycle.
Yeah.
So you continue that cycle, you will get the same results over and over again, keep doing the same thing. So it was helping to start break that, helping to just learn kind of relaxation techniques so that they could get into a place where, you know, oftentimes people with kind of physical health conditions were scanning the body on a morning for symptoms. So you get into this thing and you start to notice things, and your brain already knows, oh, well, that means this is going to happen. And so understanding more about how their body was working and what was happening and how their mind was impacting on that as well. And equally, on the other side of that, you have people who would really struggle to go to the toilet if somebody else was in the house, or go into public toilets.
Yeah.
So they kind of hold on to things for a long time, and then kind of causes, you know, a lot of problems. And it's not as simple as all of that, but
No.
you know,
It's interesting. There's a lot of stuff there that I think a lot of people would relate to.
yeah, I think I always kind of found that connection with that emotional side of how we deal with things as well. I would say I'm very open emotionally and cry very easily, and very, very kind of free with my emotion. I don't see any reason to hide that, but equally I kind of see how my body reflects a lot of that as well, that kind of anxiety, that worry, and how that plays out in the body, where I see other people who, you know, really struggle to open up emotionally, to talk about things, and you tend to find the body responds to that in a certain way as well, as in like keep everything in. And again, that can be there can be lots of traumas as well that happen in people's lives that impact how they kind of hold on to things, or it's absolutely I found it absolutely fascinating.
I think it is. I think and again, I think as I mentioned earlier, it's still something that I think as a society we seem to be learning a lot about, and it's still very much a work in progress. As we've mentioned, services are being cut, so I don't know if that maybe means more people looking for that, you know, sort of people like yourself that can help in that manner. Because, as I say, because I mean, sort of NHS, they still seem to be dropping like flies, which is unfortunate. I mean, in terms of so presumably now, the Genuine Connection, that is your full time thing.
Yeah.
So how long at what point did you?
So
within those, was it 15 years you'd said?
Yeah, so I left Derwent Mine in 2019, and a lot of that was to do with kind of life. I turned 40 in 2018. I think at that point I made a lot of life choices when I was kind of in that year of 2018. I remember really thinking, this is I'm not turning 40 and this is my life kind of thing. So I think I'd always believed there was more, and I think the idea of being self-employed allows that kind of allows that freedom, I think, to be in control of your own life. Like, it's certainly not the easiest choice in the world, and
it's not, but it does make a difference though, doesn't it? I mean, that's one constant.
Yeah.
It's just that it's that control of your own life, as opposed to, you know, someone that's got a job where ultimately, if someone says you've got to be here at a certain point at a certain time in the day, that's what you've got to do. And you know, there's no negotiation from that. Otherwise, that's it. But yeah, I mean that does seem, that control is, it's worth a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like I say, 2018, lots of things changed in my life. I'd made choices. I'd left a very toxic relationship, and that had an impact on my mental health, a huge impact on my mental health. And I started to kind of see in 2019, like I say, that kind of idea of this really isn't the life that I want to be living. I wanted to be able to do things more my way, rather than, like you say, having to follow what somebody else says. I entered into a relationship where the person I was with worked shifts, and they had lots of time off. Just the way the shifts fell, and I was always going to work, and it was like, it just, I don't know, I think it got to a point, you know, you were talking about kind of work yourself before. I absolutely loved working with the clients, but
Yeah.
I hated the politics of the organisation, and there were lots of things that were happening at that time.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's such a shame, and that's exactly why I left teaching full time. I love the job. Got on really well with the kids. I mean, I'm still in touch with a lot of
Yeah.
ex pupils, and often see them sort of out around Durham, and there are times I think, oh, wouldn't it be nice just to go back, because I do feel that I could make a positive impact.
Yeah.
But like you say, there's just that politics that ruins it.
Yeah. And I think, you know, for all that I worked for a mental health charity, they weren't always the most supportive of my mental health. I experienced, you know, I think I always had this.
That's just sorry, but just that's just. I've probably said the wrong word there, but that's just bizarre that
Yeah, but
that would be the case, isn't it?
I think with anything, I mean, I worked for, it was a charity, but equally it was also a business as well. It
Yeah.
has to run in a certain way. You know, we were, like I said before, we had 2 offices. There was only 3 full-time staff between 2 offices and 1
Yeah.
part-time. We were spread thin, so anything happens with 1 staff, you're down a lot.
Yeah.
And I'd experienced a lot of things that had happened. And I think I'd gone from being the person who like went to work regardless of how ill I was. I was brought up very much that you go to work unless you're on your deathbed kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so in 2007 I had bowel surgery. I didn't heal properly from it, ended up off work for over 6 months, and ended up with a temporary ileostomy, which I kept for 9 years because I didn't want to go through any more surgery. But in that kind of space of time between the March, I'd had multiple surgeries. I was supposed to be getting married that year. I did get married that year. And it had a huge impact on the thing of, I wasn't there for 6 months. So from this person who like, oh, I couldn't let people down, you know, oh, I can't be off this week, I can't have a cold because I've got this client, I've got this going on. Next week I can have the cold, next week can't have the cold. So then being off for so long and thinking like, life didn't stop at work when I wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably the very first point of like, I don't actually, like, as much as I want to help people and I love the clients that I work with, though there will be somebody else who'll support them that will still go on. And then from there, kind of had various different things that kind of happened in my life. And when I was probably struggling the most, it was kind of like, you've got to come back to work. You know, I didn't have the time off anymore.
Yeah.
And I think as well, you know, financially, you need to be at work, you need to be earning your money. So you kind of didn't have that time to heal, really. And in 2013, it would have been, I was bereaved by suicide. I was off for about a month before I had to go back to work, and at that point I was coordinating a rapid response suicide prevention service.
Wow.
Which it was difficult to kind of go in to be dealing with clients with mental health problems.
There must have been so much triggering.
Yeah. And I didn't, again, when we're talking about kind of not realising like how much it impacted yourself, because you go, well, I've got to get up and I've got to go to work, there's no option. Didn't matter how you felt,
you feel you've got to be invincible, don't you? And I would
so
imagine particularly so in your position where you're supporting,
you've got to keep it together. But I didn't. Like, I would for the clients. Like, I remember doing assessments and then coming out and crying to the counsellors, like, because it would just bring up so much stuff.
It's gonna.
And it took about 6 months before I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I had therapy for that. I had EMDR, which was really, really good. But that therapist that I saw, she was kind of saying, like, every time you're at work, every time you're seeing a client, it's re-traumatizing you. But that thing of like, you've just got to get on with it. You've got to keep showing up. And I think, you know, for me, it was again a point of that support that I would have loved to have had. You know, they supported me the best they could, but it wasn't what I needed as somebody who was going through that at that time, because there was still work to be done. Things had to be done if you weren't there doing it.
Yeah, like you were saying earlier, the right sort of support for you.
Exactly. And so I think all of these things had kind of started to contribute to the fact that when when I was going through like my own experiences, that wasn't the best place for me to be.
Yeah.
It wasn't always the most supportive place. At times it was, and at other times it wasn't. And I think having been through everything when I left the relationship, there just came a point where I was just like, this is hugely impacting my mental health now,
Yeah.
going there. And so it was that kind of decision, realizing I'd got into kind of the online coaching space, and I realized there were different ways to do things out there. It wasn't, I'd worked for a charity where we offered counselling services for like £3 a session, you know what I mean? Like, where else are you going to get a counsellor
Wow.
with £3 a session? I think it might have got up to £5 when I left. But, a lot of the services people still wanted for free because they expected it. Well, I was
Yeah.
referred by the doctor. When you're like, but we're not paid by the doctor. And we didn't receive funding. We received funding for the rapid response,
Yeah.
but not for counselling. So for most of the years, it was just manned by volunteers.
Yeah.
So it was a huge impact, and it was hard to walk away. But it was definitely the right thing for me, and I was starting to work with more clients around the world, and kind of seeing what was possible. And I think it was a friend of mine who I'd met in one of the coaching programs who was just like, you just need to leave. Like,
Yeah.
go home now and write your letter of resignation. I was like, can't do that. And I think it was her pushing. I mean, my boss used to tell me years and years ago that I'd outgrown the place and that I should move on. What I have found out about myself is that I will stay until the thought of staying is worse than the thought of leaving. So I will stay in something for a long time before I make that decision to leave. And I think I had the support of my current partner, who was, he was like, you don't have to work there.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to do that anymore. There are choices. And he's supported us through that. So I think
it's significant, isn't it?
It's
that.
huge. It's huge to have that support, to be able to say, like, you can do what's right for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's always been, a difficult thing, is especially if you're somebody who cares a lot about other people, doing something for yourself is kind of difficult, and it takes, I think, things to get to a breaking point before you go, I can't do that anymore.
I mean, that in itself, what you're talking about there, that's quite an achievement, and that's what I wanted to sort of just maybe touch on now. But what I'm more curious about is, in terms of perhaps maybe sort of perhaps the most rewarding thing that you've done. You've helped a lot of people in your career, in your business. Is there anything that stands out to you, something that I'm so proud that I helped someone achieve this? Or
I don't think it's a specific kind of achievement. I think the thing that I'm most proud of is when people come back and say, like, I bumped in about 2 months ago to one of the old clients that I used to work with at mine, that I used to do NLP with. And he was kind of like, I'm still doing the things that you told us. Like, that for me is like the fact that we had developed tools and techniques that he could go away and use.
Yeah.
And like years and years later, he's still using those things.
Yeah.
Like, that for me is an achievement.
So it's made a lasting impact rather than just that.
And that it was something that, like it was an issue that he was never gonna just resolve really, really quickly. It's took him kind of years to keep working through it. But the fact that he's still using those tools and techniques, I've had emails from people, like years later when I used to do recordings for hypnotherapy and stuff like that, who will message and go, oh, that recording that you did for us like 5 years ago, I still use it all the time. So it was that kind of, like I say, it's that lasting impact. And it wasn't that, I've always believed with any kind of therapy, it's about teaching somebody the tools that they will go away and continue to use them regardless of the fact that, what the issues are, or the fact that you're not there anymore. I never wanted to create a dependency on my services. I think the time in which I work with clients varies. Sometimes it's short term, sometimes it's longer term. People need, different levels of support in different ways. But the fact that they have those tools, and they still use them, or they start to. One of the clients I worked with a few years ago, she actually started to develop her own tools based on the things that we used to do together. And at first I remember having a conversation with her and thinking, I feel like such a bad coach, because, you know, I should have been doing those things for you. And then when I thought about it a little bit more, and I was like, but you know what, it's really good that you did them for yourself, because you know how to create those now. You know how to use that at any point in your life moving
Giving
forward.
her the tools to do that for herself. That's fantastic. And so what's the future look like for you, do you think?
I think it's getting back to me. I think like that's been a large part. I think I took a bit of a step back. I took a job in 2022, part-time job to have a bit of financial security. Obviously, I left Dermside Mind 2019 just before we went into a global pandemic, and the ideas that I had for my business totally changed because of, you know, the fact we went into a lockdown worldwide. But like, so I took the job because not having money was impacting my mental health. I think that's a huge thing for business owners. If you're not providing in the way that you used to, you know, if you're just not feeling like you've got the kind of the life that you used to have, and it's simple things sometimes, you know, it's being able to go out and buy yourself a coffee, or you know, meet with a friend, go out, you know, for a meal or something like that. It impacts hugely. So I took a part-time job. I left I was made redundant in March, and I think as the kind of the year started to progress, realising that there were a lot of things I hadn't dealt with. My own mental health problems, again, like I said before, we don't want to acknowledge that things are happening for us. So I think with that, it was very much that I made the decision that I needed to focus on me before I was working with clients. It's very important that you're in a good place when you're working with clients.
Well, I think as what happened to you with your job taught you.
Exactly. You've got to make sure that you're in a good place before you start working with other people. So as I say, I started therapy myself, so now I'm just starting to kind of come back into the business, and starting off, I guess, quite slowly in lots of respects. A friend and I have come together to create the CEO Connection, which is co-working sessions every week in Durham. They're starting in October. So we're going to be doing those, and that's a free session for any business owners to come along, because what we want to create is that support network. You know, we're coming into winter. We know what it's like, how difficult it is on days like this, that absolutely, you know, chucking it down today. To like just go, I just don't want to do anything. I don't feel it. Where if you've got purpose, you've got somewhere to go, you've got, you know, other people around you. And as well, you know, when we decided to come together to do it, we were very much aware that, you know, you shouldn't have to run your business on your own. You don't have to, like, what you don't realise when you start to run your business is you have to be able to do everything. Like, it's not just about doing the coaching, it's about doing the marketing, it's about doing your accounts, it's all of the different things that you need to do. But that pressure that's on us to do all of those things, where what we're hoping is that there will be much more of a skill share. So if somebody has some skills and knowledge that somebody else doesn't have, they'll be able to share that knowledge and kind of pay it back. So that's really why it's still that connection idea. Everybody is the CEO of the whole business, so that's kind of how that name came about, and bringing in the connection side of it. Very much want to bring people together to be able to support them and grow their business, so they're not on their own, and so that they can learn new skills as well that they maybe didn't have previously. And just have, like I say, the main part of it is having a support network. It's having other people around, so you're not on your own all the time.
I mean, that sounds absolutely fantastic. Certainly, I think with the current state of mental health in the country, I do think that there's going to be demand. I think you're going to be successful with it. I hope you're successful, because I think your heart is absolutely, your passion shines through for this. So I'm going to wish you all the best with it.
Thank you.
Donna, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.